Hello and welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host, Danille, here with Ken.
What's happening today?
Oh, nothing. Just a normal weekend. We went a little e-bike riding this weekend.
Yeah, we got some e-bikes ready for our van adventure. We'll be
fun.
living in a van down by the river.
I know. We're doing van life this summer, so that'll be interesting for you guys. In August, we will be hopefully live streaming from the RV park.
We're going to try.
We'll see how it goes.
Who knows?
But then we also have a couple things coming up. We have Limitless coming up in June. So that is fastly approaching.
Yeah.
So for
if you guys missed the webinar, we had a webinar last week with George Gammon and Robert Kiyosaki.
Right.
So make sure you go take a look at that. If you didn't see it, it's fascinating about the dollar, the demise of the dollar. So
Yep.
yes, and of course they'll be at Limitless. So make sure that you guys come, along with Joseph Wang, who, by the way, was he was on the open market desk for the Fed in New York. Basically, the guy buying the bonds. So he's the guy deciding what the Fed's going to do. So.
Well, yeah, and then Steve, if you could put that in the show notes so people can be able to easily click on Limitless if they are wanting to find out more or attend. Please post the one that goes straight to the checkout.
Yep. And by the way, don't forget Chris Voss, Dennis Prager.
Yeah, we have Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference author.
It's one of my
him.
favorite books. So
Yeah.
I've never met him. Actually, that's not true. We did meet him when he came here, but briefly for like a minute.
Right.
But can't wait.
Absolutely. So before we hop in today we're going to be talking about the bank failures and how that's affecting real estate and how we see it affecting real estate in the future. But before we get into that, let's hop into our Twitter questions of the week.
What do you got, Jer?
All right. So Ken, you asked, how do you think the recent bank failures impact real estate, which is what we're talking about today. So Mike says it affects every market. Yes, people will put their money into real estate to get it out of banks in solid areas, but normal working class will take a huge hit. Job loss from no one buying, construction supplies down, and that's my opinion.
Bob and weave.
So interesting.
Have to agree with that. Yeah, I don't think people really realize what's going on with banks. Obviously there's been some bank failures, but the bigger issue, those are around deposits and the price of the bonds and things like that, with the interest rates from the Fed. But the real tsunami hitting the shore are defaults, real estate defaults.
We're going to get into that. We're not going to get into that yet. So we're going to go to our next Twitter comment.
I do this every time.
Ginger, I know. He always jumps to the end.
I get in trouble.
Ginger said, one thought, as I am sure there are many others, is that banks may start tightening on their loans. Less people are able to qualify, which means less people will own and must rent. It's important to have knowledge in this now. So,
true.
We're already seeing tightening on lending from banks, especially in the commercial space.
I would talk about that, but I would get in trouble.
But we can't talk about it yet. So let's go to our third Twitter comment. Phil said Ken always goes right to the meat of the issue. He does. Yes, he does. Extreme Real Estate Investor says definitely seeing less liquidity, especially in the less favored asset classes. Liquidity is a huge input to price, so it will bring down prices for sure. If it stays contained from here on out, it may not be overly dramatic. Do you have anything to say about that, Ken?
I'm afraid. No, of course. Guys, listen, I can't wait to get into this topic. This is a big, 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 big topic, and hopefully you guys realize that we are literally just at the beginning of the game here. This is just starting.
Yeah, and so basically we were looking this weekend at different things, and then you've just seen it just in your own business, but, commercial real estates, they're getting tighter with lending.
There's a few things. I think if you back up and you start to go back to when the Fed started raising rates. By the way, how many times has the Fed raised rates? 10 times. That's a lot.
In
their last 10 meetings. So
right.
It's nuts. Like, this is nuts. Okay. So I love. If you're on the single family fence, you're going to fight. You're going to say, we have a very, very low inventory and we're good. I get it. But you're not paying attention to the tsunami that's sitting out there about ready to hit the shore, because the one common issue amongst all of this is money, banks. Everyone has money involved in this game. So if you're in single family real estate, you're playing a very small piece of the real estate pie. And I think that's kind of the point. And so we were already seeing 50%, 55, 60% loan to value 6-8 months ago.
Now explain what that means for people that don't understand.
All right. So if you're buying something that's $100,000, before you could get maybe $70,000 in bank debt, and you have to come up with 30 of equity. Now the banks are requiring more equity, and they're tightening their underwriting. So now you have to, let's say they're going to give you $500,000 or $50,000 on $100,000. That means you have to come up with $50,000 of equity. So the difference between debt and equity has changed a lot from a bank's perspective. So from a bank standpoint, they're mitigating their risks, and they've been doing this for a long time, at least 6 months. On the commercial side, so they're a little bit different, where the commercial side of the business actually is pretty trackable. What I mean by that is, like, if I have a deal for my apartments, let's say, I know whether or not that loan's going to mature this year, next year, the year after, right? So most of the time, residential, single family folks don't have to deal with that issue. Most of the time, they're not staying in their house through loan maturity, right? And I think that's the big difference. And so the banks already see this repricing, because when rates go up, and they have, as we all know, it drives prices of commercial real estate down significantly. So you have that issue, and that's just one issue, by the way. There's many.
I do feel like you're jumping ahead a little bit, though, because I don't think that everyone understands how commercial real estate loans are structured. So maybe explain that versus how single-family loans are structured.
Sure. Well, single-family loans that's a really good point. Single-family loans are based on people's individual credit, generally. So I guess if you have 680 credit score, you get a little bit more favorable deal as of a week or two ago.
No, it's not.
Okay, but the point is it's based on a credit score, and it's based on, I had to take a shot at Biden for that one. So the point is it's your normal deal. You go in and they look at you personally. They look at you. You are the asset to the bank. You're going to be the person that's going to pay that back. They're looking at your tax returns, all the things that you're supposed to be looking at before they give you a loan. Of course, they're making sure that you can pay that loan back, but they're also making sure that you have the equity. Okay, so that's how a single family transaction works. Pretty straight and dry now.
And it's locked in for 30 plus years or 30 years.
Yeah, typically, right? So, okay. And the collateral, of course, is that home, whatever the home is, right? And a little bit different for investors, and there's different kinds of things going on here. But generally, that's how a single family works. On the commercial side, it's very different. So obviously, if I've got $100,000 a month in a debt payment, most people aren't going to be able to cover that. What's going to cover that is going to be the actual tenants. So very different. So the bank now is looking at the real estate as a business. Okay, so on the single family side, they don't really look at it as a business, although they're starting to, because of Airbnb and investors and all that kind of stuff. But in the commercial side, it's almost entirely looked at as a business. So let's just take a look at an office building. When depending on how leased the office building is, that's your income, period. Right?
And how much you're leasing it for.
Yeah, exactly right. So the lease rates and the lease occupancy, or the occupancy, that determines your level of income. It's really that simple. So if you're 50% vacant, you got a problem, okay? And your expenses are similar to a single family home. So you have your taxes, you have your insurance, you have your utilities, and all those kinds of things, okay? And you have tenant costs. So the banks are looking at the banks look at the commercial side very, very differently. And what actually pays the debt? The net operating income, which is simply income minus expenses. That's it. So the bank's looking at a net operating income, and we talk a lot about this in the videos, but the net operating income is the way the bank gets paid. So on a single family, it's a credit score, or the individual. On a commercial, it's the net operating income. So very different. They both are looking at how the management and how all those kinds of things. And so that determines your level of loan for commercial.
Absolutely. And then what we have happening is that these smaller banks are heavily invested in commercial real estate compared to your larger institutions.
So what you have to do is you can't look at the actual number, like the dollars, because when you try to size that up against a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America, commercial debt, commercial mortgages are going to be a very small percentage, because you have to look at their overall share of assets. So when you're looking at a bank like Bank of America, what percentage of commercial debt is a percentage of Bank of America? That's the right question, right. The percentage, because that would be their exposure if we had a commercial mortgage issue. Okay, now you move to you've got the big banks, you've got the regional banks, you've got small banks. So, and you got community banks. Actually, you got those are the four. So then you have to look at their allocations. So you have to look at the allocations based on their assets themselves, just like you would if, let's say, your home represented 50% of your net worth and you lost your home. It's the same thing. You have to look at the exposure as compared to the total assets of the bank, just like anything else. So the bank has a financial statement that shows their assets and their liabilities, and you have to take a look at how much of that is actually the commercial debt. And to your point, that's a big number. So,
yeah, it's closer to, so on these larger banks, it's about 6%, and on these smaller banks, it's about 29%. So it's
correct.
A big
right.
part of their books.
This is the point.
And the problem is, to really break it down, is that these commercial loans are going to be expiring. I think a third of them are coming due in the next 1 to 2 years. And so they're not going to necessarily, like if you own an office building and your rents have went down or you have a lot of vacancy, you might not be able to refinance it at these higher rates for the amount of money that you need because it's worth less.
Well, this is my opportunity to actually say you jumped ahead. Oh, okay. Finally. But let's talk about why. So let's go back to the pandemic. I did a video about this, and as you guys know, the actual commercial debt issue is $3.1 trillion expiring here in the next few years. So what happened after the pandemic and the work from home? Exactly, right? So the normal work week, even in my own office here, right? We walk around like the place used to be full 2-3 years ago. Now we've got this flexing work from home program, and everybody's got their own thing. And it's all being managed just fine. Point is, people are coming in 3 days a week as opposed to 5 days a week. Okay, that is trickling down. Before that happened, I was actually looking at expanding my office. I was looking, okay, I'm in a position now where we're growing, and we were looking at the space right next door to us. Okay, so this is happening all over the place. So Kiyosaki made an interesting observation. He said the vacancy for office building in New York equals 34 Empire State Buildings vacant. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that landlords aren't able to pay their debt and their expenses. That's what that means. So there's a repricing going on of the actual assets. So that's the real issue is, if something was $100 million in downtown New York and it was full and now it's 50% or 60% occupied, which is entirely true, then stands to reason that that $100 million building is going to be worth probably 40 or 50 million because it's so vacant. And so the cash flow or the actual occupancy and the lease rents don't actually cover both the expenses and the debt. So that's actually the real issue. So as those loans start to mature, imagine that $100 million building. And you guys, by the way, if you guys walk by these buildings every single day, that could be a mall. That could be, you can drive next to an office building. Though these, we're talking 50, 100 million, $200 million assets here that you guys just drive by each and every day. So, grocery stores and centers and all that kind of stuff. These are real big numbers. And as the retailer, like we remember the other, you and I went to that. We rode our e-bikes over this little area, and the main grocer left, and the thing was about 50% vacant. Remember? Mm-hmm. And you said, "Oh my God, look at all these for lease signs." So that's happening all over. So somebody owns those centers, and as they start to reprice, there's no question in my mind that the values are down significantly, and the owner or the landlord or whatever you want to call them is going to have to come up with some money to actually keep it. And that is actually the real issue, is that we have massive cash requirements on the equity side in order to keep the properties. And so what's going to happen is that a lot of these are going to go make their way to the bank. I'm going to do a video on this for Friday too.
Yeah, and you have it a little more broken down as far as what
a little more easier to understand. Sorry, I'm rambling a little, but I did a video on this on Friday called "The First Domino to Fall." It's gotten pretty good attraction already. I think we got how much? 22,000 I think was through today. So in just a few days.
Yeah. So where do you see all of this place? So when these people go to, how does that work? If people go and they have a office building or retail center and they can't get the money to refinance the loan, or the debt is too expensive, how does that work?
Dangle the keys and give them back to the banker.
Okay, so you kind of see that happening.
100%. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the issue, guys. So this is defaulting debt. So an owner has to decide, do I pay the money to recapitalize this asset or not? And many are going to walk. So that debt is going to, and the point is, let's just pick a name of a bank. It doesn't, First Bank, or National Bank. Okay. There's a zillion national banks around the country. So National Bank could have $1 billion to $10 billion, let's say, in assets. Okay. And if 20 to 30% of their assets are in commercial real estate, this is a real problem. These are loans that are going to be making their way into National Bank or First Bank's assets. And why it's a concern, people in the single family space, they're like, "Oh, that's not gonna affect me." Fucking damn right it is. It's gonna, this is gonna be. This is a bank. These are people that give money out on the single family side too, and. So I think it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be the tide is going out, people.
Do you think that the residential lending could get tighter?
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like if you're taking shots, let's say you're the bank, okay, and I have a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here. I have an allocation for single family. I have an allocation for commercial. And I'm getting waxed on my commercial. What do you think? What would you do?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they're just going to have to be more careful what they lend. And
Bingo.
Also, the regional banks are the ones that, have always lent to me as a small business owner.
Correct.
Instead of these big banks like Chase has never given me a loan or anything. Just because when you own your own business, they're just really crazy about you not having a W-2. So the regional banks is where a lot of people have gone to get lending that aren't in the box.
And here's another big issue. How much is a 1 month T-bill right now? 3 months?
I think it's 5%.
Okay, so let's just say it's 5. Basically, what that means is you could take $100,000 of your money, stick it in a T-bill, and make 5%.
Right.
What do you think those loans are maturing right now? What do you think the loan rate is? 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you got a loan at 3, and let's say you kept your money in the bank. Let's say it's 4. That math doesn't work for a bank.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So the banks are losing money with the money that they have on deposit at 4. and they have loans out at 3.
Right. A lot of loans.
A lot. Okay, so they're not going to renew at 3. They're like, who would do that? So, their cost of funds is more than that. So, this is a big thing. So, people, they're going to be in the 5, 6, 7% range on a renewal of the debt. So this is just simple math. The banks are taking water right now as a result of these higher rates.
So everyone keeps asking, and MW is saying, with the housing shortage, will developers step in and buy office at a discount and repurpose it into multifamily? Yep. Cheaper to repurpose than to build from the ground up, right?
So I've had this conversation a lot. I haven't been able to find a building that actually makes sense. Because like who wants to live in an office building? But I love the idea. I can't disagree with it. But, how do you got bathrooms, you got common areas, you got all kinds of stuff. It's not set up for residential. Some might be. Don't get me wrong.
Right, but it's kind of like a weird set because you want, you would have to change them into livable apartments that people want to live in. So if it's just like this weird setup, or if maybe you have like a studio 1-bedroom.
So I'll give you a story. By the way, we had this guy on, John Snyder, who was on one of my podcasts. Downtown building in Tulsa. So I was there, as you guys know, for the NCAA wrestling tournament. And so John, this Mayo, it's called the Mayo. It's beautiful. They filmed some of the movie The Tulsa King in it. It's a badass building. It's like exactly where we wanted to be every single night. It's hopping. And he looked at me as a real estate developer would do it. He'd say, "I got that building for $1." I'm like, "No way." It's like, honestly, $1. And if you want to see the story, just go to the podcast. So the point is, imagine that. So when he took it on, guess what he had? Massive liability. He's paying the utilities, paying the property tax. There's a lot of deferred maintenance. He got the building for $1. Okay, so that point is not that he got it for $1. The point is that when it was built and it was drop dead gorgeous, it's got to be 50, 60, 75 million. Okay, that's the point. Yeah. So even when he got it for $1, it was worth negative, because he had to have $1 plus he had to put money into it. So that's actually the issue. And by the way, this was an office building. He put 75 condos in it. It's also office space and retail. It's got a restaurant. It's got a big bar on top. Look it up. It's called the Mayo in Tulsa. Beautiful. The point is, these are falling knives. Question is, how far do you, and if you take on a vacant office building, there's a burn rate. You got to convert it fast. It's negative, even if somebody gives it to you.
Yeah, you're going to have a loan on that and taxes and everything else. And I mean, I don't know. Like, part of me thinks that it could not be cheaper to remodel it. I mean, if you have to do that much remodeling versus just building from the ground up, I'm not sure how much money you're saving.
Well, it's the same issue. It's like when Detroit, when everybody left Detroit, and nobody turned off the lights, when the automotive business kind of left there. And I'm generalizing, I know. So those of you from Detroit, sorry, but the point is, I flew there. I looked around, and you know what the city wanted? Property tax revenue. That's what they wanted. So they were giving away these houses for $0, $5,000, because they just wanted you to pay their taxes and then keep them up. So that's I'm not saying residential's going that way, but I'm saying that on the commercial side of the business, we have some serious issues.
Well, German brought up a good point too. You have to rezone all that, and so you have rezoning fees if the city even lets you zone it for multifamily.
That's right, and that's more money too, because you know how easy it is to get through the cities.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're so easy to work with. And then Brian's asking, how do you see the handling of keys snowballing? So I think what he means is people handing of keys snowballing.
Oh yeah, so there'll be the bank's REO, the real estate owned department, REO department, they'll be staffed up and they'll be taking back these assets. So the process will be the banks don't know how to manage real estate, which is, they're not supposed to take their loans back. There's a couple things that'll happen. The first thing is that the loans, these loans are going to be written down. So then somebody will take the loss. So that money will make its way somewhere. So it'll be at a bank shareholder, let's say, or if it's in a pension or a life company, it'll show up in those returns that you get in your quarterly statements in your mail. And maybe you're with a money manager or wealth manager or whatever. So all that stuff will be written down and it'll show up in losses there. Again, based on the allocation that you have or participating in or not participating in. So that'll all wash itself out. And then, I think then it'll be real estate owned. And then they have to put it out to a third party brokerage company, get a broker's opinion of value, and then they'll shop it out just like you would anything else. Those of you might not remember, but I've been in the business 30 years. Finding a vacant building or finding something that's 50% vacant was common. So these just get listed just like anything else. The problem is I bought some before. I bought one from actually Silvergate Bank, which is one of the banks that went down, that switched to crypto. But one of them that we bought was in Houston, and we bought it for almost nothing. We bought it for lower than their debt. So basically, they took a write down, and then we had a tremendous amount of work to do on it. So this could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are asking too, I forget who asked, but what inning of the commercial market do you think we're in right now?
Good question. Well, I think that each asset class is in a different inning. So let me explain. I think office buildings are probably in the third inning in a 9-inning game. Maybe, probably the third to fourth inning. Whereas industrial, it's not even in the game. Industrial is super strong, not a problem. Malls are probably in the fifth inning.
Somebody had mentioned that every
inning.
mall in Arizona just about's been
yeah. So think of the anchors in malls. Sears, Macy's, Kmart, that kind of stuff, gone. So multifamily, it's going to depend largely on the debt that the syndicator put on it. So if it matures this year or next year, then they potentially have a cash call issue. The irony there is that the multifamily is actually not in trouble, like the asset class, like from a renter and expense standpoint. It's the debt that's the big problem there. I think retail it's kind of hit and miss. So let's just like the center where you and I rode our bikes to this weekend. Obviously, was in trouble.
Yeah.
Not all of them are. Some of them have really strong anchors, like big grocery stores, and and there, if a neighborhood shopping center has a big strong anchor like that, then typically the dry cleaner and the mailbox et cetera, let's say, and or the UPS store and the massage and all the hairdresser, all that stuff, they seem to do well in those centers because of the amount of people coming. So so you got to watch that.
Satria is saying, I can see these office buildings changed into dorms or hostels, but I feel like the piping would be horrible.
Yeah.
MW has something interesting. They're asking, what about repurposing office into sectors that are in higher demand, like warehouse space or storage or something like that?
Yep.
Where is the opportunity to take advantage of office when it crashes?
So interesting that you brings up that. I have a friend that did this. Actually, he did it for a different reason, believe it or not. He built he's a self-storage guy, big one, actually the biggest in Nevada, and he built. The city didn't want storage on the Strip on Las Vegas Boulevard, so he built an office building that looked like self-storage, or the other way around, I should say, self-storage that looked like an office building. So when you drive by it, it looks like it fits in. but it's really storage. So that is for sure an opportunity. Again, if you get the building for the right number and you know there's retrofit and all that kind of stuff. But storage is a very, very good one. But there's only so much storage that goes around too.
Well, it depends on the area too, because I know, we have a friend in the wine storage business, and something interesting about storage is in these more high-end areas, you don't necessarily need storage because people have big houses and in certain parts of the country, basements and attics and things. They actually tend to do better on where there's more apartments. People don't have the storage.
Correct. Right. Storage follows rooftops, and I would say entry to middle, level rooftops. So that's typically, because we've done a bunch of storage in the past. Typically we, if a storage place is full with a waiting list, and it's surrounded by a residential area, that's typically pretty good. But also during a recession, people pull back on that stuff. An extra $75, $100, $150 a month, they move into their garages.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the storage business has got its own issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robert is saying, what about office into big homeless hostels? And I said, well, the city kind of wants that property tax, and I don't know if people would want big homeless shelters in a
Well,
city
the
center.
city could buy some of these and turn those in. They did that in New York, as we know. They've I know at least 9 different micro hotels they took.
Mm-hmm.
They took over, literally. Also, hotels are in a bit of trouble too. That's another one.
They're doing okay right now, right? But it's teetering.
Yeah. So when again, hotels, people group hotels, but there's multiple categories of hotels. There's their traveler type hotels, and then there's your middle ones, and then there's your luxury ones, and there's little boutique ones, and so there's all kinds. But I know. Take a look. And there's some people that were doing this for a while. By the way, they were converting these hotels into micro units, but I know the cities around the country, if just Google, you'll see they have taken over a number of these for some of the homeless.
Yeah, situation.
Yep.
So if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please hit the like button. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to attend Limitless. We have that coming up in June. So we're going to have some great speakers on Limitless. Get your tickets. They are, I think, through the end of the month. We have the wrong graphic up here, but I think through the end of May, you can still get a discount.
Yeah. You guys want to meet me? Be there. It's going to be awesome.
Oh
I'm going to sign a book. Sign a book for you.
So I guess, do you feel like this is going to affect residential at
Well,
this time?
the I always tell, how could it not? If it's not going to crash residential, but if it's going to affect seriously the underwriting and the borrowing, the money market, the financial markets are going to get rattled hard, and they make their way into all your local, small, regional, community banks, including the big banks.
Yep.
There's going to be a big pullback on real estate, and the Fed's going to get, everybody. I have to agree that I think the Fed, they waited a little long. It was March of 2022 when and then inflation continued to go up to 9% in June. So they waited a little long, and they've overreacted. So they it's like they were asleep at the wheel, and then now they've overcorrected. So it's like, now they're heading toward a tree, and that's essentially where we are right now. And I think that if people don't think that that real estate is going to be affected, then I think they're not very self-aware.
Exactly. And Satria had said, honestly, there was too much office and shopping before COVID-19. And that is kind of true. I mean, COVID-19 really sped everything up, like the lockdowns and everything.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think what's interesting to note is that typically assets, get lent based on occupancy and need in an area. So as, the population gets bigger, there's more and more and more. So, but right now, guys, nationally, the commercial office is 20% vacant. That's the highest it's ever been.
Right.
So, and I know we had that guy on from San Francisco that was saying that I've been hearing 30, 40, 50% vacant in San Francisco. Obviously, we talked about New York already. So, as these loans come due, it's going to be a real problem. And I don't know what it's going to do to single family. I know everybody wants to know. I just don't know. But I do know there's going to be massive defaults in real estate.
And do you think that the smaller banks could be in trouble from these defaults?
It's going to depend entirely on what they're holding. So obviously, if somebody's holding an office building that's mostly vacant today, which there are so many, that people are still paying leases on, that the workers are not going there anymore, I would be concerned, just like you would. So just instead of calling it a bank, just think of you if you own that asset. If you owned an asset that was fully leased and the people weren't coming there because they've changed their business model, they're now a work from home company. When those leases renewed, would you be concerned?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what a bank's thinking, right? So you got to look at the individual assets of each bank. But that's why the percentage is interesting. That regional bank exposure is up in the 25 to 30% range.
Absolutely. And so now we're going to jump into our inner circle questions. We're also still going to take some from YouTube, so make sure you ask. But to join Ken's Inner Circle, to go to kensinnercircle.com. We have really great happy hours, awesome training, and also Ken answers all your questions either on here or by email. So Kai is asking, we have been receiving our property valuation notices, and on average, they're being assessed around 30% more.
Yep.
What is your suggestions on appealing the value and how to get that reduced? Also, do you recommend using a firm or doing it on my own?
Okay. This is the processional issue. Guys, we're seeing the exact same problem. So first of all, let's just address the issue. We're seeing it on utilities. We're seeing it on insurance, and we're seeing it on property taxes. So I don't know what makes up the property tax payment for where you are, but traditionally it's schools, it's fire, it's police, it's infrastructure, those kinds of things. Those costs are way up. Okay. So now the cities are taking a look at their budgets, and they're going, holy crap, I don't have enough. So that's where these are coming from. So I think we need to make that clear, okay? That the costs are going up, and this is just the processional effect of it. The only way I know is to appeal. So there's an appeal process, so I would immediately file an appeal and get a date. Make sure you hit the deadline, because there's typical deadlines, and they're all different everywhere. And then you can figure out how to appeal secondly. So in some states, you might want to get an attorney that understands this. There are companies that do this. We use CBRE. We use a couple other local smaller companies, but there are companies that specialize in property tax appeals. But please do understand the way I've been in so many of these hearings before. The way they do it is they look at your neighbor to the left, to your right, they base it on the value of your home. So you got your value, and then you've got your assessment rates, which there can be sometimes more than one. And they can manipulate all of those. So it's a complicated process if you've never done it, but I would for sure at least file an appeal and then figure out, what your next step might be.
Yeah, I know my dad appealed his last year and won the appeal. I mean, it still went up, but it was less.
Yeah, so oftentimes they'll give you something. I've been in a couple times where they've said no.
It's a lot of, it can be a lot of work though, so it might make sense to hire somebody. I know my dad hired somebody.
If you're going to be in the house a long time though, and it goes up, let's say $10,000, and you make 5 of that back, and you're in the house for 10 years, it's $50,000. So that's a lot. So it's definitely worth the effort.
So Bill is saying that he lives in a Denver suburb, and their property taxes is slated to go up 52% on their house. So
yeah, we're seeing massive property tax problems. We're underwriting properties every week.
Right.
And we're seeing them, and it
really affects cash flow.
Whew.
Yeah, it can. Franco said, I want to start investing in real estate, and I like the house hacking strategy. I currently live in San Diego. 5 minutes drive from work, really good area. What would you recommend for me? Buying my first house hacking and moving far away from my job and leave the affordable house, or keep saving money for a 20% down and still living in affordable housing?
What would you say?
I would just say, what's the better area to rent? Like whatever the better area is where people are going to want to rent. You didn't really, I don't know San Diego that well, and you didn't explain where each of these were at, but if you're going to buy something and you want to house hack it, that means you need people to live with you. So if you need people to live with you, you want to live somewhere desirable. So wherever's more desirable, that's going to cash flow better.
Yep. And I got to concur with that. I think at the end of the day, what you want is to be in an area where people want to be. And that's typically around schools that maybe their kids are at. Could be, something fun like a park, or it could be, near the beach, or it could be near employment. So just make sure that, number one, that should be your rental, because you want a lot of cash flow from that property. Right. You don't want to have to fight for a tenant. Exactly. Also, make sure you understand what your mortgage and debt costs are going to be if you do make that move, because it could really, it's just math, as we always say. You got your rent plus your expenses minus your debt, and then that's your cash flow. So make sure that all works. Make sure you're not negative going into this soon-to-be recession.
Absolutely. Kiki said, I want to start real estate investing in Nevada where I live. Is it worth it to get my Nevada real estate license? It's a big commitment of time. And is the effort worth the benefit?
So I believe it is. So I'm a huge believer of education. Just in a lot of ways, how it's taught, I'm not necessarily a fan of. But my son just went through this, so I can speak specifically about that. So my son, decided he wanted to get into real estate. So he, one of the bigger issues was picking the right real estate school. Mm-hmm. And in Arizona, it was called the Arizona School of Real Estate, which is actually where I went, ironically, 30 years ago or whatever it is. So he went, and he's raving. He's like, oh my God, these are real teachers. Hello, like real people doing real land deals, and real people, doing subject to deals. He just went to a Pace Morby's book signing last week, and then shadowed one of his guys at his office. So, these are real people doing real deals. They're not just teachers teaching curriculum. So this is important. So that's why I like it. Because, and then what Cade mostly said, my son, is what I really, really got out of this was my network. He's like, hundreds of people going through this at the same time. I'm meeting lenders, I'm meeting brokers, I'm meeting realtors, I'm meeting all kinds of people in the real estate business. And, so don't forget about that, not just the actual time commitment. But he did his in 2 weeks, which is a heck of a commitment, every single day for 2 weeks. So actually takes the test today, Monday. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say yes, because you're going to learn a lot and you're going to build your network. So go into it with both of those ideas. And also, I think it'll help you sort through what you might want to do. So like, as for example, my son, believe it or not, he's like, yeah, there's so many things. I can do commercial, I can do residential, I can do land, I can do property management. The right real estate school is gonna walk you through all these different things.
Absolutely. So James wants to know from the inner circle, if the dollar loses its value as reserve currency, how do you see that impacting real estate?
Well, it's huge, but I don't think it will.
Yeah.
Where's it going to go?
People have to pay rent. So like even in times of inflation or hyperinflation, rents just move with the inflation markers.
You go to London, which we were at recently, or you go to Thailand, or you go to where we were all over the place, Bali. People are paying rent. They're not the baht is not the world's reserve currency, but they're paying in baht in Thailand. So I just you shouldn't have to worry about that. It doesn't really matter, though. But I don't know exactly what will happen if the world decides to abort the dollar. It's a bigger issue. Has a lot. I would be more concerned from an oil standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big inflationary issue, right? So if,
Potentially, yeah.
Potential inflationary issue. But real estate moves with inflation, and things, like Ken said, things are paid for and bought all over the world in currency that's not the reserve currency. So it's a bigger issue with cost of goods and retirement and a bunch of things. But as far as real estate goes, it just moves with inflation.
I think you're probably good at, if you guys have fixed debt, think about this. What is the value of the home you grew up in? Think about that. I'm guessing for most people, mine, it was under $100,000. Was yours? What was yours?
I have no idea.
Of course.
I have no idea what it was worth.
Oh my gosh. Who are you?
I can tell you what it's worth now, but I have no idea what it was worth when we moved in.
Think about that. Like, so why is it so much more? It's because of inflation. I don't know about you guys, but every time I leave the house, it's $100. Like, you know what I mean? Like every single time. So it used to be a 20. Now it's 100. Okay. So there's a point to that, and there's a reason for that. And if you're in fixed rate debt, then inflation's gonna help you. So just get in fixed rate debt, and then you'll create all this equity that is fabricated through this inflation. But at least you lock your position. It's basically a put against inflation.
Absolutely. Keep saying absolutely today.
I know. I've noticed.
I'm sure somebody will give me crap about that.
As you should.
Nancy's asking from the inner circle, how do you handle tenants that always pay late but always pay?
Oh my gosh. These people drive me nuts. I know. It's a behavior problem. So first of all, if you're getting late fees, and there are a lot, just let it be. I know that's a weird comment, but like if they're, I've taken over properties before where, they're getting $10,000, $20,000 a month in late fees. And these people are just, I don't know how they do it, but the rents are due on the 5th, let's say, and they're paying the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. But the late fees are, it's actually worth the inconvenience. And they're, there's, the last thing you want to do is evict somebody. However, I do think it's something that you've allowed, and it's something that they do. So it's a it's just a choice for you. I personally like people to pay on time, and we nip it in the bud right away, right out of the gate. So I have one manager that had a little different philosophy than me. Now his philosophy is more like mine. And and he's unwinding late fee issues and late issues at a property that I actually own and manage. And it was just a conversation, and we're having some people leave over it because I said, listen, hey, they signed a contract, they're supposed to pay on time, and that's it. And if they come with situations, it should be, if people have a tough time, it should be, every once in a while. It should not be every month.
Well, and it depends on your structure too. I made a mistake on one of my leases where I put a $30 late fee, but I forgot to write per day. So I have tenants that like to pay me late, and I can only charge them $30.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know this until now.
I did not. I missed the per day when I was filling out my lease. So
what a difference 2 words make.
You have to, be mindful of that. And 2, on their renewal, you could up their late charges.
That's a $1,000 problem.
It's a big problem. I know, it's a big problem. And
30
I usually
times
get paid
30 is 900.
7 or 10 days late. But yeah, so nice. I'm working on that. So I'll be changing that when the lease renews.
I'm going to move into one of your places.
So anyways, you got to be careful with that. But it to me, if they're paying, usually I want to communicate, why are you paying late, and make it known that it's not okay. But at the end of the day, there's not too much you can do about it, really. I mean, if they're paying and they're paying the late fees, and in Arizona, like, you can start some kind of eviction process, but as soon as they pay, it resets. So
there's 2 things I would just recommend. One is when the day after they're late, they need to be served. Period. Number 1.
If it's becoming a problem.
it's your call.
Yeah.
But that's what we do.
Okay.
Our rule for a whole company is to serve them the day after they're late. Then, now they're served, they can have whatever excuse they want, but they're served. Okay. Now, by the way, we can serve them. We serve them. Secondly, if you take a partial payment, you take $100, you have to reserve. You've broken that original deal because you serve them based on one amount. So if you take a partial payment, then now the tenant's back in control. So you have to reserve. So those are the two things I would do. Now, you can serve, and then you want them to come in and commit. You don't want to have to chase them. So and then serve later based on a series of promises, right?
Absolutely. And absolutely, there you go again. But then two is you want to make sure that you're also communicating with them at the same time.
I was just going to say absolutely that for sure.
Yeah, you do. But
Cade, look at Cade.
Yeah. So anyways.
Look at that. My son's watching.
I know. I've been communicating with him. So Jason from the Inner Circle is asking, what's the best way to find reliable contractors?
Oh, wow.
Don't we all want to know that?
Oh, my gosh. Well, the hell we've gone through.
Oh, I know.
So, first of all, at the level we're playing at, I've got a pretty easy, to be honest. We got big contracts. We're building properties, even our renovations. These are big numbers. I find it really hard at a smaller level. We've gone through, 6 or 8 handymen, not because. And by the way, we are kissing their asses. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, please come. They come, but man, there's just a series of things that go on, the flakiness and all the things. I don't know. I think maybe there's a shelf life to some of them. However, every once in a while you find that one. Like I got one today about the house, the landscape guy. I love this guy.
Yeah.
He's got his own little business. He's got his trucks. He's got his trailer. And, he's like, I'm going to be there at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. I was gone already. I went to the gym. And he's there sending me pictures, sending me photos. What do you think? Da-da-da. So they're hard to find, man. But I got to tell you, we had a lot of we've been pretty good at finding ones. But so.
Yeah, I'd say, for me, referrals are huge. I like to look at referrals. I use Facebook. This is like on a smaller, small landlord level.
That's been a good one for you.
Facebook's been good for me. Also, Thumbtack's been great. TaskRabbit. What I've learned is you go through a lot of misses before you find a hit, but it's just part of the process. And usually, we'll get a contractor that'll work with us for 6 or 12 months, and then they move or they get too busy, or, if they're good, they get too busy or whatever. And then you have to kind of start from the drawing board again, but it's just part of the process.
Yep. It is.
Especially handymen. Usually like with electricians and plumbers and air conditioning guys or girls, you can find, good people that kind of have a legit business, but handyman, it's a little bit harder, it seems.
We've had pretty good experience in that, and make sure they're licensed and bonded. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's important.
Very. So Joe is asking, and this kind of ties into Pavel's question too, what if someone is smoking in your place and you specifically said they were a non-smoker moving in and the lease says they cannot smoke?
This happened to you?
Well, actually, it did not happen to me because I didn't put no smoking in the lease.
Oh.
They're the ones that made me put it because they smoked on the porch.
I remember when you pulled the picture down, you could see the walls. You could see where the picture was.
Yeah, I had that smoke residue was tough, and it was very hard to get out. And I remember that, thank God, when I was showing the place to the next people, their movers were actually there, so they had all the doors and windows open because it was helping air out the smoke, for the next people to move in, because we had to paint it with a special paint. There was a lot of rehab.
It's called Kills, KLZ, and then you have to put that over it, and then you have to paint over it. So it's a problem. The thing that you can do, if it specifically says in there that you can't, because I think this is important. I don't know, actually. I hate to go out on a limb here and say that. Whether it's enforceable or not. I think it might be if you specifically say that you can't. You have to check with your local authority But you could definitely send them a notice and says, hey, listen, we discussed this. It's in your lease. And you're going to, obviously, it's going to cost you money. These are, the turnover with smoking is not good. Not to mention the potential issue to almost every single fire issue that we've ever had at our properties. It's been a smoker. We had one, oh my gosh, we had one lady. She actually had COPD, which is bad. And she went to the hospital and she was on an air tank. Mm-hmm. And then she was a smoker. This isn't funny. Thankfully, she didn't get hurt. But the tank shot through the roof, shot through to the next unit, and created a fire. We lost 6 or 8 units from that. Thankfully, she wasn't hurt. But anyway, just these little side stories.
So, Pavel actually said, a friend of mine has been his tenant for 9 years, accidentally set my rental on fire due to smoking. And he's asking, would you continue renting to them?
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, his nickname should be Sparky, right? You got to be careful. I would say no.
Renting to smokers is tough. They do a lot of damage to the property because the smoke does,
These kitchen fires they're not small things. They're one huge potential issue for human danger, number one. But also make sure that you have your smoke detectors and all that stuff up to speed, guys, and fire extinguishers. And this is a really good topic. Please make sure. Go buy a fire extinguisher and bring it to your tenant. It could save you a lot of money. Make sure you have fire smoke detectors and all that stuff in there. But I almost all of our, every single kitchen fire I think is over $5,000.
Yeah.
Almost every one.
Plus you can have a lot of injury.
That's the other point. Yeah, and it could spread for sure.
A lot of damage and injury. And you need to make sure, every unit, because I didn't know this at first, every unit needs to have a working fire extinguisher and they expire. So you have to, renew, you have to get a new one. And then also the smoke detectors are big. Making sure they work.
Don't rely on the sprinklers. A lot of older properties don't have sprinklers, sprinkled in the buildings. You want to check to see if yours is or isn't. A lot of them aren't. And then those that aren't, even worse, because obviously those sprinklers are there for a reason and they do help.
Yeah. So MW said, throw me a bone here. So what about interest rates? Where are they headed? $1 million question.
He said, throw me a bone. Danille.
Yeah.
I'll let you handle that one.
Well, I think what he's saying is he wanted me to ask the question to you.
All right. Okay. So, Friday, I'm flying to Orlando to speak at Rebel Capitalist Live at George Gammon's event. If you guys want to meet, I'll be there for sure. Make sure you go to Rebel Capitalist Live. That's going to be cool, but we're going to talk about this specifically. So George and I have different opinions on this, which is awesome. So I come at it from a practicality standpoint. I think that the inflation is going to be a real problem for the Fed. If inflation comes down to, let's say, 4 or even in the 3% range, I think that they'll stop raising rates. But and I know Powell came out and said that this might be it or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he said, but they raised it a quarter point. I believe that they may not have a raise next meeting, and they're going to continue to let inflation play out, and because there's a lag with inflation, as you guys have seen my videos. So I do think that they're going to wait and see where inflation goes. If inflation and inflation continues to go up, specifically with wages, because the employment was pretty high for April, that's not good. Low unemployment creates typical wage growth. I don't know if you guys realize that. So wage growth is a big part of inflation. So is real estate and so many other things. So to answer your question, I do believe that they're probably going to be flat. Some people are optimistic and say that rates are going to go down in the summer. I would love that. Don't get me wrong, guys. live and breathe on low rates, just like all of us. So, but I don't think realistically, I think we're going to have this commercial crash going on. I think we've got some inflation issues. I think we're going to have some bank failures all, in the remaining part of the year. And, we're going to have some serious instability. The one thing that low rates will do is create inflation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. So low rates create inflation. So that's why I don't see them going down. George, on the other hand, sees this inverted yield curve, where the 2 year is more than the 10. So it'll be an interesting combo that we're going to have this week. Of course, I'll be able to watch him live in Orlando talk about this.
Yeah, Matt's saying the Fed pivot is coming. Anthony's saying don't expect interest rates to drop anytime soon. Ryan says no way they are reducing rate with this high inflation. The most they'll do is hold.
Yep.
You kind of agree with that.
I agree with that.
MW says higher rates will create more bank insolvency and a commercial real estate crisis.
I agree with that.
Enrique says 2 ways to decrease inflation: increase rates or increase productivity. Josh said we should never, and I mean never, have lending rates below 5% ever again.
I actually agree with that.
And then Enrique says lower government spending will decrease inflation, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it should be interesting.
It's a good question.
Oh, SN said in Canada they're only at 4.5% inflation, so their inflation's lower than ours right now.
Good. Yep.
So very, very interesting. But we will see you all next week. Make sure to check out Limitless. Go to Steve, if you want to put it in the comments one more time. You guys can check out Limitless. The prices will go down at the end of May, so make sure you get your tickets.
Prices will
go up. Go up at the end of May.
Look at
Go up again. All right, have a good one. See you guys next week.
See you guys. Bye.